Welcome to the Sober Thinkers channel. I'm your host, Michael. I would like to thank you guys for tuning back in with me today. And if it's your first time, thank you for tuning in as well. And if you like the content that you hear, please hit the like and subscribe button for future content. Now, when I was young, I never had a real care or concern for animals, because I never had a real understanding of them or their purpose or nature. However, as I've gotten older, I begin to better see and understand how animals that survive on nothing less than pure self-reliance can teach us some valuable things. Now, one thing I've noticed about animals is that they stay within the confines of their nature and never deviate from this, even though their life cycles can be quite vicious at times. And more importantly, when they sense danger, that things around them and their immediate surroundings just aren't quite right, and some sort of major shift is about to occur, they move in proper accordance and get as far as possible from said danger or threat, because they are wired instinctively to be aware of these things, both immediate and distant. Now, although they can't communicate on the same level as we do, they have a way of letting both themselves and us know that we are in imminent danger. But now, somehow on the flip side of things, these human beings that we are, that have been given just about every intellectual and basic instinct, as well as being able to understand, read, and properly discern their overall environment, has seemingly the inherent nature to ignore these instincts and constantly serves that common denominator of our own destruction. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I didn't always see things from this perspective with such a clear view, as I used to walk around practically clueless to the various influence that drive society as it does. I saw things through a completely different lens of life. And as I've stated before in the previous videos, that as a society and as people as a whole have greatly evolved in every aspect related to advancement and quality of life, they have in the same breath devolved when it comes down to the very life-sustaining fundamentals that keep things in balance, intact, and in its proper order. But now that we have all of these things integrated into our society that seem to drive us into a state of blind disarray, not knowing which way is up most of the time, we seem to have lost our way fundamentally as it relates to what it means to be a high functioning society / human being, unable to maintain the proper checks and balances regarding these things that serve as critical components to the overall foundation of our society and world. So now I see the nature of man as many highly discerning individuals before me saw and gave warning to, as one highly destructive group of people, hell-bent on continuing on this current trajectory that they're on, without any ability to be reasoned with whatsoever. Now, why is this, some may ask? Well, the simple answer, in my honest opinion, is that as a society, we have come a very, very long way from which we've started. We've created, innovated, and scaled a great number of things that have propelled us to new heights like never before. However, for the sake of reference, Matthew states that in the last days, men's hearts will wax or grow cold due to the increased level of wickedness and the love of such thereof. And this reference states also that one should build a house on a foundation of solidness as opposed to sand, because the one will be able to withstand the elements and pressure that comes from within as well as from without, and the other will not. The one will be able to last and the other will be lost. Now, I don't know if it's just me Or are we as a society and a species doing far worse now than the position we were in during our original outset? As I've stated, we've been giving so much leeway to do whatever thou will, so to speak, that it's basically set the tone for our own destruction. Now, man, woman, and child alike are all appearing to be on that same trajectory and thus share the same fate that lie ahead. We have become a bunch of zombied out separatists, forming our own little groups like crazed loyalists based upon whatever ideals we believe to be true about any given subject or situation, regardless to whether it's based or rooted in any form of truth, rationality, or sensibility. As long as it feels right, good, and gets us emotionally charged, the aftermath is of little to no concern to them. And this, in my opinion, is quite disturbing. When a society and its people get so distracted by every little mind-numbing concoction and triggered by every little thing like a crazed dog barking at every and anything moving, which is senseless to me, there lies a real problem. We're so busy being driven and unbridled, or being driven by unbridled emotions, wanting the freedom to do just about whatever we choose to do, that we have little to no regard of the after effects that linger long after said actions were taken. So think about it for a moment. Would you give a child everything they wanted, like the freedom to eat candy all day, stay up late every night, and cut up in class without any regards for the teacher or any type of authority? No, I don't think anyone in their right minds would see this as beneficial to that child. In fact, they see it in the exact opposite manner, because when given to and under the influence of sound judgment, discernment, rational thinking, and forward thinking, it's clear that the actions or these actions would prove detrimental to not only the child's current condition, but to their future as well. That's pretty much the state that we're in as a society, behaving like a bunch of petulant children that not only want what we want the way we want it now as well, only focused on satisfying our current desires without any regards to the types of after effects these will produce. However, all the while not having the slightest idea or clue that I liken unto a hunter that has laid a trap in the woods unbeknownst to the animal. So has the stage been set for you and your demise as well by behaving in this manner. Now, one of my favorite films of all time is the Titanic. And what's interesting about this film, as well as real life situations, is despite the warnings that were given to the captain in regards to the potential dangers that lie ahead, the people were clueless and had no earthly idea as to the danger that faced them, so much so that all they could do is dance to the music as if in no danger at all while the scene of horrific destruction was being set because no form of heed was taken into account of the warnings that had been given. I liken it to today's society, people walking around clueless as to what's really going on around them, and the world literally closing in and crumbling at their feet. And they have no clue as to the inner workings and the dynamics that make these conditions as they are. Yet, within the dynamics, you see these same folk turning on each other like zombies in a scarce land, not once considering the origins of such conditions, nor the influence behind that drive them in the first place, which is usually they themselves, due to lack of keen awareness as a whole. because we're so busy being a self-absorbed busybody with the attention span of a 3-year-old, always triggered like a military grade or issued rifle, always looking, never seeing a clear picture of what or how things ought to be seen and or perceived, always hearing but never listening with a distinct ear to comprehend what's being heard and or said, and forever knowing everything but somehow never seeming to know anything of any real value, worth, or importance, only just a bunch of space-occupying, mind-numbing, worthless crap that amounts to pretty much nothing at all. Now, I say all of this to say that mankind, at this point, should have taken cue from their non-human counterparts as it relates to being in proper order and in tune to the degree that you need it to, so that we can actually progress as a species, as opposed to the self-destructive and deteriorating cycle we seem to have been in since the beginning of time. So now, similar to Genesis 18, where the one known as Abraham practically pleaded with the angels of the Lord to spare Sodom if they find a certain number of righteous heads, both men, women, and children alike. And again in Genesis 19, just one over, where Lot served as a witness to these same angels as to how wicked the land and nation had become. And because of such, there was nothing left to do save destroy the whole fucking thing. Because just like them, you today have that same hardness of heart and stiff-neckedness like Pharaoh, so to speak. And unfortunately, you too now face that same fate as did former civilizations that have come before you or come before us. And what's scary is that we don't even care to learn from our mistakes enough to even try and correct them. Now, liken unto them, you meet this same fate because you want to keep going forward on this current and destructive trajectory, as if you were a locomotive headed straight for a cliff at full speed, with no way to brace for that coming collision and nothing to stop that coming disaster. You're more concerned with your identities, your identity groups, and senseless ideologies that are in no way absolute than saying that all grass is green everywhere all the time. And as stated before, you have no one to blame for the results that are to come and are basically irreversible. Once again, thank you for tuning in to the Sober Thinkers channel. And remember, hit that like and subscribe button. And most importantly, remember to think positively, think wisely, and most important, think soberly. Until next time. Now, previously I stated how it seems as if the animals that exist in its own natural habitat has a much better grasp on the notion of survival, and this is based on pure, uninfluenced instincts and the ability to make whatever decisions necessary to support that. Now, even though they may not have or possess the same intellectual capacity as do we and evolve at their own rate, they seem to not deviate from the fundamental skill that helps them survive on all levels, which include keen awareness, high levels of discernment, and an action-driven decisiveness. Now, we, being the most evolved of all species, on the other hand, on the planet, seem to operate in the exact opposite of our capabilities, which include, but are certainly not limited to, being unaware of our surroundings, undiscerning, lacking the ability to read the circumstances in which we now find ourselves in, and very undecisive as to what path we're going to take. Now, the one that leads us up and out of this current self-inflicted debacle, or the other that leads us further down into an unending abyss, one which seems as though we enjoy being on, quite to be honest. Being unable to see the dangers that surround us and both lie ahead. The fact that we are, as once again stated, likened unto blind sheep, headed for a massive and great slaughter, with the stage being set by those which can be likened unto ravenous wolves. Based upon the direction I can already see us heading, it kind of reminds me of the of two series that's on Netflix, The 100 and The Tribes of Yoruba, which both seem to have a similar theme. And what theme would that be, might you ask? Well, the overarching theme of these particular series, at least from what I gather, is that man and civilization, as we once knew it, has ceased to exist due to the various conditions that ultimately caused pretty much a global meltdown or collapse, and man have found himself once again in a state of primitiveness like never seen before. Now, what's so interesting to me is that we put all of this time, energy, and effort into building ourselves and society up to the heights and levels which we've now obtained, which has been also accompanied by a great deal of pride and arrogance, and such as like never seen before as well. And despite all of this effort, we, mankind, always seem to pretty much fuck it all up, destroy everything gained, only to have to start back to square one all over again, and having everything fall basically like a house of cards. Now, as stated in previous material, there was at least a time or some level where some level of fundamental and sound understanding amongst the people was in play. Some level of rationale that kept things in order, both things and people in their proper places, give or take a buffer or two. Now, we were all once set in motion to the beat of our own drums, attempting to do whatever we desired, obtain whatever we wished for, no matter how small or great, coexisted and commingled in the same spaces and places, all seemingly on one accord, one with another. Now fast forward to today's current time frame as such. Although we've accomplished and obtained even more than we've ever done before, we still have this inherent nature of self-sabotage, and thus on schedule and on cue to destroy just about every ounce of evolution we've managed to obtain. Now, we're a whole bunch of goddamn separatists, segregated off into our little groups by which we're now defined and deemed to be so damn important, the end all and be all, which is pretty arrogant to me, because it's based on such short-sightedness, thus lacking the ability to expand the lens, so to speak, and get a much more broader view and perspective, which ultimately affects the decision-making process as well as the overall outcome. And unfortunately, we seem not to be able to process these life-sustaining traits, or simply just don't care to exercise them to our fullest capability. I guess it's just easier to go down the road alongside everyone else, one that puts up no form of opposition towards us as an intellectual species, as opposed to doing the opposite and taking the road less traveled and going through the process of cultivating and bringing forth our fullest potential. All because we're once again so focused on our senseless beliefs and ideologies, all pretty much emotion driven, thus lacking any type of compass or guide which leads to rational and productive thinking to the benefit of everyone. Now, just like man in his primitive state, it's all about chaotic and destructive extremes that only bring about perpetual problems and offer very little to no solutions whatsoever, just an unending cycle of destruction and downward directional pull. For in this current state and time, we seem to only know one mode, and that's go, as it pertains to how we both approach and handle all manner of situations and circumstances, as well as each other. At each other's throat, constantly like a pack of wild dogs fighting over one piece of meat or stale meat, as opposed to coming together and finding common ground so that you'll be able to aid one another with the times that lie ahead. And yet, like that same pack of wild dogs, you're too busy fighting one another to see that oversized vehicle approaching, ready to pretty much knock the snot out of you all due to your own foolish unawareness. And in this instance, as I stated before, you have no one to blame but yourself, because you've had the luxury of enjoying just about everything that society has offered you from one generation to the next, by all the while failing to take heed to the critical warnings given you by the critical supremacy of nature in and of itself, which in this instance will not and must not be ignored one way or the other. And so now the piper must be paid in full, no more installments and no more delays. And once again, thank you for tuning in to the Sober Thinkers channel. Again, my name is Michael, and don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you enjoyed the content and would like to view more. And in all you do, please remember to think positively, think wisely, and most important, think soberly. Until next time, thank you.